Whispers of the Haunted Library. I feel compelled to share with you a chilling encounter that transpired within the quiet confines of my beloved library. As a librarian, I have always found solace in the hushed tranquility of these book-lined halls. Yet, there was one night when the serenity turned to a bone-chilling terror that I struggled to put into words. It was a stormy evening, rain battering the windows, and thunder rumbling in the distance. Closing time was upon us, and I began the routine of dimming the lights and locking up the doors. The library's atmosphere seemed even more eerie, with the storm's relentless onslaught against the windows, and I couldn't shake off a sense of unease that had settled over me. As I went about my tasks, shelving books and shutting off computers, I began to hear faint giggles echoing through the stacks. At first, I dismissed them as a product of my imagination, perhaps amplified by the storm outside. But as I moved toward the source of the sound, the giggles grew clearer and more distinct. My steps were cautious as I ventured further into the library's depths, guided solely by the flickering emergency lights. The main reading area was now bathed in an eerie half-light, casting long shadows that seemed to dance with a sinister intent. And then I saw her, a child, no older than 6 or 7, standing at the end of an aisle. She was dressed in an antiquated dress, the fabric frayed and faded with time. Her eyes were hollow, like two voids absorbing all light around them. The giggles had ceased, replaced by a haunting silence that seemed to press against my eardrums. My instincts screamed at me to flee, but a strange compulsion kept me rooted to the spot. "Are you lost?" I asked, my voice trembling despite my efforts to sound calm. The child tilted her head, her gaze unbroken, and her lips parted to emit a soft, chilling whisper. "Come and play with me." I took a step back, heart pounding, the blood rushing in my ears like a river. The child's voice was distant yet intimate, as though it whispered into the depths of my mind. Panic surged within me, and I turned to flee, but her words seemed to follow me, reverberating within my skull. The path to the exit seemed endless, the emergency lights flickering in rhythm with my racing heart. As I reached the door, I dared a glance back, only to find the child standing at the threshold of the darkness, her gaze still fixed upon me. I stumbled out into the rain, soaked night, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The storm had abated, but the chill in my bones persisted. I never returned to that library after hours, haunted by the memory of that ghostly encounter. The once beloved sanctuary of knowledge had been forever tainted by an otherworldly presence that defied explanation. Dear reader, believe me or not, this is the tale of my terrifying encounter with a ghostly child in the quiet library. The memory still lingers, and the library's hushed aisles now hold a new, unsettling dimension that I cannot erase from my mind. A terrifying library encounter. As a university student, I often found solace in the quiet corners of our campus library, especially during exam season. The dim lighting and the scent of old books somehow made the stress of my studies feel a bit more manageable. However, one fateful night, my sanctuary turned into something straight out of a horror story. I had been preparing for a particularly challenging midterm exam and decided to spend the night at the library, hoping to squeeze in as much last-minute studying as possible. The clock on the wall seemed to tick away the hours faster than I could read, and before I knew it, the rest of the students had left, leaving me alone with the eerie silence that seemed to seep into my bones. It was around 2 a.m. when I realized I had been so engrossed in my notes that I hadn't taken a break in hours. My eyes felt strained, and I decided to stretch my legs by walking down one of the narrow aisles between the towering bookshelves. As I turned a corner, my heart skipped a beat. There, just beyond the bookshelf, was a figure. The figure was translucent, its edges flickering like a candle's flame. Its form was hazy, but I could make out the faint outline of a person. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. The ghostly figure seemed to be facing the books on the shelf, as if lost in its own world. I blinked, thinking that maybe it was just a trick of my tired eyes. But when I opened them again, the figure was still there. Fear gripped me, but curiosity compelled me forward. I took a hesitant step, and the old floorboards creaked beneath me, startling me and the apparition. The ghostly figure slowly turned its head, and I saw its eyes. Empty, hollow voids that seemed to pierce straight through me. A chill ran down my spine, as if icy fingers had traced their way along my back. Just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, the figure began to fade, its form dissipating like mist in the morning sun. As the last traces of its ghostly shape vanished, the library returned to its familiar stillness. I stood there, trembling and breathless, wondering if what I had just witnessed was real, or if my exhaustion had finally taken its toll on my mind. I gathered my things in a rush, leaving my notes and textbooks behind, and fled from the library as if the hounds of hell were nipping at my heels. The image of that ghostly figure haunted my thoughts as I stumbled back to my dorm room, and even now as I write this, I can't shake the feeling that I was not alone that night, that something otherworldly had been lurking behind the bookshelf, watching me as I studied in the dead of night, whispering pages of the midnight library. It was a night like any other. My best friend and I, always on the lookout for unique experiences, had decided to spend the evening at the local library. We had heard rumors about strange occurrences happening after dark, but we dismissed them as nothing more than ghost stories meant to entertain the adventurous. As the sun dipped below the horizon, we entered the library, greeted by the comforting scent of old books. The librarian bid us a good evening, cautioning us to be out before closing time. With a playful nod, we assured her we wouldn't overstay our welcome. With flashlights in hand, we began exploring the aisles, our footsteps echoing in the quiet space. We laughed and whispered as we recounted tales from our childhood. It wasn't long before we noticed something peculiar. A book on one of the shelves seemed to shift, as if it had a life of its own. We exchanged glances, chuckling nervously as we brushed it off as a trick of the dim lighting. But then, another book wiggled on the shelf, and then another. Our laughter turned into a puzzled silence. Curiosity piqued. We approached the shelf, extending our flashlights to get a better look. To our astonishment, books were indeed moving on their own, sliding out from their places and arranging themselves into a neat stack on the floor. My heart pounded in my chest, and I could see the disbelief mirrored in my friend's eyes. As we watched, a feeling of unease settled over us. The air grew colder, and a soft whispering filled the space around us, as if the pages themselves were murmuring secrets to each other. My friend and I exchanged a nervous glance, our flashlights trembling in our hands. Without warning, a sudden gust of wind swept through the library, extinguishing our flashlights and plunging us into darkness. Panic gripped us as we fumbled to relight them, the whispers growing louder and more urgent. In the dim glow of our flashlights, we could see the books moving even more fervently, pages flipping and words appearing as if written by invisible hands. And then, from the midst of the swirling pages, emerged a figure. A woman dressed in clothes that seemed old-fashioned, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. My friend and I stumbled back, our breath catching in our throats. With a final, haunting smile, the woman faded back into the sea of pages, the whispers growing softer until they were mere echoes in the air. And just like that, the library returned to its stillness, the books resting once more on their shelves. Trembling, my friend and I made our way to the exit, our hearts still racing from the otherworldly encounter. As we stepped out into the night, we knew that the library held secrets far beyond our understanding, and that we had been granted a glimpse into a realm where stories came alive in the most unsettling of ways.